listening to the Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats in Orleans Boat World on Team 1200.
As we identified in the top of the hour, folks, we're joined today by Heather Bonnety. Heather heads up the Marine Division at Rhodes Williams. Rhodes Williams, of course, have been a long-time sponsor of Renegade Bass. If, in fact, you're looking for insurance for your boat, your car, your home, anything for that matter, of course, you can click on the logo for Rhodes Williams on the Renegade Bass website, and we've, through their cooperation, have registered the domain www.Renegade Bass Insurance. Heather's been looking after all of the anglers in the community for some time now and certainly is a true expert in the field. Good morning, Heather. Thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing some of the information with us.
Thanks for having me once again.
Excellent. Well, listen, Heather, I know you spent some time out on the water with some of the Renegade pros. You've been at the Pro-Am and you kind of got a much better appreciation. It's been a long time that we've been partners. I guess the whole thing's been working out nicely?
I am so enjoying this relationship. I've got to tell you, everyone with Renegade Bass is wonderful to deal with, and it's a great partnership.
Excellent. Well, listen, Heather, one of the things we discussed off there is some of the finer detail. I mean, and I suppose for the listeners out there, it comes as no surprise, but there's always fine print associated with an insurance policy. But if you pick the right policy and you know your brokers and they're working on your behalf, then there's an awful lot less, quote-unquote, scary monsters lurking in that fine print. The thing I wanted to mention a little bit, because of the seriousness that the fishing communities takes there, even the off-season, one of the things I want to start off with is the layup period. Maybe you can briefly describe what the layup period is, because I don't think most people have no idea that there is times where they can't be in their boat.
Well, I really think people don't realize that. As a part, one of the clauses on your policy specifically states the period of time where they expect that your boat is out of the water. That's factored into the ratings. And, for example, not every company is the same, but the company that most of the Renegade members are with has a layup period where it's stated your boat will be winterized, laid up, and out of commission from November 30th to April 1st.
I see. And the premise behind it, obviously, is that affects your rates. You mean your boat is really only liable in the periods that it's in the water, and I guess there's only really fire and theft in the off-season. Well,
actually, a lot more things happen in the off-season than than you would think. There's rodent damage, there's freezing in the lines, there's weight of snow and ice. So we do see claims that result over the winter period, but the expectation is that the boat will not be in the water.
But certainly those claims are, of course, covered.
Oh, of course, yes. Yeah. There's very few exclusions under the policy, and none of them have to do with the weather.
Well, I know that there hasn't been too many claims, but certainly speaking with the members of Renegade Bass who, in fact, actually been obligated to exercise their insurance policies, and certainly they've all been very, very pleased. Now, obviously, if there is a layup period and you're supposed to have your boat, quote-unquote, out of commission by December 1st, just say for the snowbirds or for some of the guys, because we get some hardcore guys, especially like in the Toronto area, they'll be fishing the Niagara Bar, for example, all winter in their boats or would like to. Is there, in fact, actually an opportunity for them to extend the period that their boat is in the water?
Oh, of course. They just need to make a phone call, either to myself, hopefully I'm their broker, or whoever does deal with their policy. I can't, as I said, respond for every company out there, but there is absolutely no issues at all with adding the extension onto the existing policy. It's usually very minimal cost, and you will be covered.
Yeah, I think I remember speaking to one of our members, and he was like $20 or $30. It wasn't very much at all for the period that he wanted to be able to continue to use his boat. And
exactly.
And you know what? It's probably the scary thing, though, is that we do see an awful lot of boaters out there. I can guarantee probably 90% of them are unaware of the fact that there is a layup period and, keeping their fingers crossed. I mean, probably aren't aware, don't realize that they're not even insured at that point. So that's certainly some very sage advice. So all they have to do is effectively contact you if their boat is insured through Rhodes and Williams or whomever looks after their insurance and kind of go through the details. It's just a formality, right?
Exactly. We can do it easily.
Now, the other thing, of course, obviously, again, touching on the fact that the seriousness of the Renegade anglers, is there a number of them? I know one of our executive members, Steve Barnett, for example, has family in Florida and has taken his boat down there. Of course, you're going to be outside of your layup period, and now you're going outside of, quote-unquote, your jurisdiction. Maybe you can speak briefly on how that works and what are your limitations?
Well, there are navigational limits on every policy. They're very similar with most of the companies we deal with, and basically is you cannot go south of the 40th parallel. So you can go into, New York, you can go into the harbor, you can do Maine, New Hampshire, Michigan, but if you're going beyond that, we need to know about it. Again, it's an extension on your policy. We extend the navigational limits, and you will have coverage. There is some cost involved. However, what the company does is they basically ask for your itinerary, where you intend to be, the duration of the trip, and they price it out that way. Very affordable, but you need to have it if you're taking your boat down south.
Certainly. So I guess from what you're describing then, for the Renegade guys that are fishing the St. Lawrence, for example, if we're into the New York side of the St. Lawrence, the policies that you use through Renegade Bass Insurance is in fact actually we're still covered without having to get the navigational limits extended?
Oh, definitely. The Great Lakes and their tributaries, St. Lawrence, the Hudson River above George Washington Bridge, they're all covered. So you're fine with those areas.
Excellent. Now, one of the things, I've got a couple more questions I wanted to touch on, but before we go too much farther, Heather, obviously, you've been dealing with this for some time now. You're heading up the Marine Division at Rhodes Williams, and obviously the nice thing about it is that when you're dealing with a broker like yourself, you effectively shop the insurance companies on an annual basis, right? And I guess you're always trying to find the best policies with the greatest ease of claims and so on and so forth. Is that effectively what you guys are obligated to do?
Oh, definitely, and especially with the Renegade members. Because we are a broker and we have a marine department, we place a lot of business with certain companies, and they value our business and they want us to continue placing them there. So our clients get above and beyond service because they know that if a claim doesn't go well, I'm going to hear about it and I'm not going to be happy. So we have sort of almost the fact that we have this buying power behind us. But we definitely look at everyone's needs, where they're going, and the best possible policy that they can get at any one time.
Now, on the contrary, obviously, I'm sure you probably get all kinds of insurance companies that are courting you guys to try and underwrite the business that you guys are responsible for. Is there a huge difference in the degree of coverage and the degree of care and the degree of service that you're going to get from Company A versus Company B?
Oh, you need to pick apart those policy wordings. There are policies out there that don't cover weight of snow and ice. There are certain policies out there, the way they handle personal effects coverage is different. And in actual fact, the company that we place the Renegade members with, we've added a special clause just for Renegade members to make sure that their fishing equipment and their tackle will be covered properly. So we've made changes to protect our clients. No two policies are the same, and you really need to know what you're buying. And not all companies are the same when settling claims, for sure.
Absolutely. Certainly some very, very useful advice. We're going to talk a little bit more with Heather Bonity about some of the other things that people need to be aware of when they're going through the fine print and insuring their boats. Obviously, a lot of us have a false sense of security because we happen to get a frightfully cheap rate, but a lot of times you need to be very aware of that. So right after the break, we'll talk a little bit more with Heather Bonity from Rhodes Williams Insurance. You're listening to Renegade Bass Radio. I'm Paul Shaddad.
How do you know when your insurance fits? How do you know you have the coverage you need? How do you know when the best value for that coverage has been found? You know when your coverage comes from Rhodes Williams Insurance Brokers. That's because the brokers at Rhodes Williams work for you, not an insurance company. And as independent brokers, they can shop a choice of insurance companies to find you the perfect insurance fit.
Get insurance that fits. Call Rhodes Williams Insurance Brokers at 613-226-6590.
With hunting season quickly approaching, you owe it to yourself to take the short drive to Bennett's Bait and Tackle, your total outdoor store in Smiths Falls. Come browse through Bennett's wide selection of hunting and archery products. Whether it's moose, deer, ducks, or geese, Bennett's can supply you with the products and the knowledge to make this year's hunt the best yet. Names like Remington, Browning, Benelli, and Sacco, just to name a few. Crossbows from Excalibur, Rhino, or the new Striker. Thinking black powder hunting? Check out the black powder guns from CVA and Tradition. Why not have a new Bushnell scope installed on your favorite gun? And don't forget, Bennett stocks a wide variety of ammunition for all hunting seasons, along with a vast assortment of calls and decoys for those early mornings in the blind. Don't wait. Visit Bennett's today. Bennett's Bait and Tackle, your one-stop fishing and hunting location. 158 Lombard Street in Smiths Falls.
From the Ottawa River to Lake Ontario, You're listening to the Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats in Orleans Boat World on Team 1200.
Renegade Bass has enjoyed a wonderful partnership with Rhodes Williams Insurance here in Ottawa, and in fact, actually, it's now probably gone on 7 or 8 years. They, in fact, underwrite the entire events that Renegade Bass has been hosting during that period, and have now grown to become by far the number one insurance through Renegade Bass. So much so that we even, in fact, actually have a Rhodes and Williams contingency program rewarding the members of Renegade Bass who write their policies with them. But even beyond that, one of the things that the anglers, and obviously all anglers are pretty frugal and certainly very, very involved in researching what is the best product for them, have all come back and identified that the pricing and the degree of coverage that they got through the Rhodes and Williams program was certainly more comprehensive and less expensive. Heather Bonnety, who heads up the Marine Division from Rhodes and Williams, shared a bunch of information with us before the break. And now, Heather, I have a couple more questions for you. One of the things that obviously we're now touching on the function of price is, there are all kinds of cheap prices, and you did touch on how, in fact, a lot of times, you're not really getting what you paid for. But you almost have a pretty strong confirmation that you can pretty much match anyone's price.
Definitely. The company that we deal with, and it's no secret, Naughty Max Aviva, they love Renegade. They love the members. They're totally on board, and they want the business. So they are very competitive in the rating, and they want to insure all the Renegade members.
Yeah, well, one of the interesting things about this, and obviously for the listeners out there, we keep talking about Renegade Bass Insurance. We keep talking about how Rhodes and Williams have been underwriting the policies. We have a number of people who've joined Renegade, the association, for their $50 membership fee, exclusively to benefit from the group home and auto insurance and from the marine insurance. And some of them have saved so much money. That even goes as far as Quebec, Heather. I know we have a number of anglers from the Montreal area, and I was amazed at the number of them that switched over going to Rhodes and Williams because of how much money they saved. I guess you guys saw an increase in business from there as well.
Definitely. We can insure Quebec, no problem. We welcome those members as well with the benefits of, because we're an Ontario broker, quite often it's Ontario wordings, which are a lot less restrictive than a Quebec insurance policy. So we can definitely do both sides.
Which is wonderful. And I know that one of the things that some of the guys were amazed at, not only the guys from Montreal, who obviously have been insuring their bass boats and their fishing boats through other companies, and some of them, the thing which really touches me as being a business owner is that a lot of us carry an awful lot of insurance, and we use the same companies, and needless to say, they work really hard at trying to match prices. But despite that, your prices were better, and more importantly, the comprehensive degree of coverage was better. But one thing which was interesting, Heather, maybe we have a chance to speak on it, is that, through that program, there's also another content degree of insurance that you guys offer?
What we can easily do is increase the personal effects coverage, which is all your fishing tackle, the rods, everything that you have on board. The prices are very competitive, and we've removed a clause in the policy that at one point stated you first had to try to claim under a home policy, and this would become a secondary policy. For Renegade members, that clause is removed. So essentially, this becomes the first payee for any personal effects that you have on board your boat if there's a loss.
Now, obviously, that gives us all the warm fuzzies, particularly as we often travel out of town, because we have so much equipment in the boat. And yes, though we certainly are very secure and we all tend to be very vigilant when we're staying at hotels, it gives you, the degree of comfort that you're looking for. But, one thing which you shared with me a little while ago is that it has huge implications just on your homeowner's policy as well. You're talking about how, in fact, even if you made a small claim for your boat, there's a claims-free discount that you'd lose on your homeowner's policy as well?
At Rhodes and Williams, we always try to keep boat and home insurance separate. And, I do home and car insurance as well. And there are so many benefits to having a standalone boat policy, and one of them being you're protecting the claims-free discount on your home should you ever have to put in a claim on your boat. Another thing is, in the event of a loss on your boat, you want to deal with a marine adjuster who knows the marinas, knows what you're talking about when you say, you damaged your prop. A home insurance adjuster has no clue. So really, you want to deal with a specialist.
Now, when you're talking about the claims-free discount, that could be pretty significant, I think, and that's where it dawned on me on how much that could be and how long you lose it if you make a small marine claim.
It's hundreds of dollars. On the average home policy, someone who's had their home, for 5 or 6 years, they are probably receiving a $200 or $300 claims-free discount on average on their home policy. So when you factor in losing that for 3 to 5 years, it's substantial.
Yeah, I know, and I'm talking to a lot of the Renegade guys. I mean, at $300, that's almost half the price of your marine policy for the entire year, which makes a huge, huge difference. Heather, just switching gears for a sec, I know, again, this is a testament to the degree of comprehensive coverage that we get through Rhodes Williams. The Renegade fraternity is very tight, and though we always want to win if we're fishing an event or whatever it may be, obviously we're all competitive people. If, for example, if Steve or one of my other friends, runs into trouble, he has a mechanical breakdown, we often will offer our boat. A lot of us never thought about whether our insurance coverage is in fact actually binding if you lend it to another person. I mean, how does that work through Rhodes and Williams?
With the policy that we deal with, the named insured is the individual who actually owns the boat. It's pretty much assumed that everyone in the household will be operating the boat. So there is absolutely no issues with that. In addition, the insured also includes any person who is operating the boat with your permission. Now, they aren't the named insured, so if they're injured while operating your boat, they won't be entitled to the medical benefits that come with the policy. But should they happen to damage the boat or anything happens while they're operating it, there is absolutely no problem whatsoever. Now,
that is not the case for all insurance companies, so is it?
I can't answer that. I don't know. You'd have to look. You really have to pull out fine print and see who the insured is. For example, our policy will cover the equipment and the personal effects of anyone on board your boat. So if your fishing buddy or your partner's got their rods and reels on your boat, your personal effects coverage can also extend to them while they're on your boat with this specific policy.
Now, obviously, I mean, kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts of it, I mean, you need to make sure that you're aware of what it is that you're getting coverage for. And, and I guess, folks, this is a wonderful testament to the fact that when you're dealing with experts, they're aware of what boating habits are and what our tendencies tend to be, and in fact actually have selected a policy which best represents the type of coverage that we're all looking for as anglers and who spend a fair amount of time and obviously a huge investment in money in the tackle and obviously the equipment we have on our boats. Listen, Heather, I want to thank you so much for taking the time this morning. Obviously, we're all enriched by the knowledge and certainly probably much more aware of what we need to be doing when we're fishing in the off season or whether we're going south and so on and so forth. Folks, if you need to get in touch with Heather, you can go to renegadebass.com and click on the Rhodes and Williams link. And more importantly, you can always probably remember this, you can always find them at renegadebassinsurance.com. You'll find the contact information for Heather Bonnerty, and obviously she'll be able to answer any questions that you have regarding your policy, or at least deciphering what in fact you might have, and more importantly, what they have to offer. Right after the break, we'll be joined by Chris Hockley, Marketing Director from Pure Fishing. I'm Paul Shabatti, listening to Renegade Bass Radio on the Team 1200.
Welcome to the Berkeley Tackle Tip, the how-to section of the Renegade Bass Fishing Show.
In pursuit of finding that perfect mousetrap, so many of us are always experimenting with new products, and you've often heard me say that the weakest connection between you and your fish, of course, is your line. The folks at Berkeley have invented so many different lines and so many different cutting-edge products that, needless to say, we all want to try them. If you're not careful with your funds, though, you certainly can become wasteful, and line is an area where it becomes easy to spend and waste money. Taking a page out of the Renegade Bass Tournament Handbook, you'll see so many of us, in fact, actually only unspool our reels halfway. We know that we're never going to ever see the midway point, whether it's on a spinning reel or on a bait caster, so why would you want to change the entire spool? Not only is it wasteful on a commodity that shouldn't be wasted, but it also is just time-consuming. Whether you're a tournament guy and you're respooling 12 or 15 rods and reels, meaning before each event, it does take time. One of the things I encourage you guys to do then is only peel off halfway, and then the next time when you go to peel it off, you'll actually hit the knot where you join the two and you know that you're at the right point. Then you could take a 150-yard spool of whether it's their fluorocarbon or Trilene XL or Trilene XT, and you're only going to use part of that spool. That 150 or 300-yard spool will probably be able to do 4 or 5 rods. Same thing goes for their braids. If you want to use their braids, a lot of times I want to take one reel, use braid this time and maybe fluorocarbon, I will actually reel it onto an old spool. You can use a cordless drill, or you can reel it onto an old reel, and then that way you just refill it back up again. I'm Paul Shabata. That's your Berkeley Tackle Tip of the Week.
Gulp Alive from Berkeley is the most revolutionary artificial bait yet. Its potent attractant acts like a blood trail in the water. And unlike live bait, you can reload and reuse it. In fact, it not only outlasts live bait, it actually outfishes live bait. Yeah, that's what we thought you'd say. Gulp Alive from Berkeley. What you need to catch more fish.
Western Signs and Lines is celebrating 29 years serving Ontario and Quebec and wishes to use this opportunity to thank all of its loyal customers for the years of support. Western Signs and Lines are the specialists for road and parking lot painting and all traffic control signs. Visit them at westernsigns.com. Good luck to all the Renegade Bass competitors from Cabin Trudeau and Western Signs and Lines. Have a safe and successful season.
Paddle Tails are known for their plastics, and rightfully so, but there is so much more. They stock Minn Kota trolling motors and Humminbird electronics along with the associated Navionics maps. They are very proud of their rod and reel selection, stocking Shimano, Quantum, G. Loomis, Okuma, and St. Croix products. Their inventory also includes boat maintenance items such as Bass Boat Saver, a product they're particularly excited about. So whatever your needs in bass fishing, be it the old reliable or the newest bestest greatest, come on out to Paddle Tails. They'll be glad to see you.
Whether you're a weekend angler or hardcore fisherman, you'll find what you need right here. The Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats, and Orleans Boat World on Team 1200.
Well, we're back, folks, and we're joined by Chris Hockley, who is the National Marketing Manager for Pure Fishing. Pure Fishing, of course, is the big boy on the block with brands such as Fenwick, Berkeley, Shakespeare, you name it. It's all part of the umbrella. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Undoubtedly, we know that everyone's going to get, some Shakespeare and maybe a hide-a-hook bobber for Christmas, so your Christmas shopping is done.
Jingle bells, jingle bells. It is the season. Man, what an exciting time for anglers. I got to tell you, anytime, any season where somebody tells us we have to go out and shop for fishing equipment, I love it.
Oh,
so,
of course.
yeah, that's everybody's got to get hide-a-hook bobbers and ugly sticks for Christmas.
Well, that's certainly very, very generous of you to pick those two in the lineup of obviously everything under the Pure Fishing umbrella. But Chris, obviously anyone who knows of you as of late, recognizes that you're the person responsible for all of marketing for the Pure Fishing brands here in Canada, which is a huge job, something you've taken on the last couple of years, and you've really run with it. So congratulations on that. But I think the important part, though, is that you're a guide, you're a tournament fisherman, you're one of the guys, and I know you still love catching fish more than anybody else. And so I really want to take that, that perfect blend. I mean, it's like the race car driver who's also the mechanic and talk both sides. Because, we get a lot of viewer mail through radio at renegadebass.com, and a lot of times people are a little confused about fishing lines. You guys are undoubtedly, create more line than every other company combined. You've got everything from soup to nuts. Maybe we can talk about it because, there is no one perfect line for any situation. Would you not agree?
There's some that are more right for more occasions, but there is no one perfect line for every occasion, for sure.
And I guess ultimately, you heard so many of us talk about it in seminars, and I know you've been responsible for a number of them yourselves, is that, fishing lines are just tools in your toolbox, and it'd be no different than asking, a carpenter, what do you like better, a hammer or a saw? And I guess it kind of comes down to what exactly it is that you're going to do. So if you're going to entertain me here, I'm just going to kind of go down through the gamut, so to speak, and you can kind of describe the products that you guys have and where you feel that product shines. I'm going to start with the basic ones. Now, monofilament is a line that I guess most of us grew up on, especially those amongst us that are elderly. We fished with mono, and it was kind of the all-purpose line. With the modern technology, with everything out there, is there still room for monofilament in every angler's box?
Oh, there absolutely is, and with the Berkeley Trilene brand, it's the number one selling fishing line in North America. And there's a reason for it. It's not an expensive line. It's strong as all get out. It's abrasion resistant. it's the closest thing to the perfect line for all around that you can get. And the only, and I can't even say the downside, the only attribute, which of course is a stretch to it, and the reason why so many people are trying braids and some of the other things, that's the only thing. But there are times that you'll want that as well. And for sure, because of that reason, you definitely want to always make sure that you consider that nylon monofilament for different applications.
I know that so many of us know. We've had Denny Brower on the show just recently, and obviously he's kind of the grandfather, the godfather of jig fishing or slackline presentation, and he still swears by either monofilament or fluorocarbon, where so many other people would be reaching for braid. I know that when I tend to introduce new people to fishing, I'm probably more comfortable, especially if I'm not there in every situation, recommending a conventional nylon monofilament live XL or XT. Now, while we're on the subject of XL, XT, now you guys did a bit of a risk, because that infamous or tremendously iconic red box, blue box has been around forever. You went and changed the formula. Were you guys a little bit concerned about changing something that so many people have grown so accustomed to loving?
A little bit concerned would be an understatement of the century. I mean, the company was walking on eggshells. We knew the interesting thing is, I mean, the XL, which of course is the big seller, and I mean it's 10%. Stronger now. It's actually got 55% better wet strength. It's 20% better in fishing knots. It's 20% more flexible. I mean, we knew the stats, but how do you portray to the angler that it's a new package, it's new, but it truly is really improved. I mean, you look at the XT, which is the extra tough. It's 47% more flexible. I mean, this stuff is already manageable. It's already abrasion resistant. It's got more abrasion resistance, more shock resistance. Everything's good all the way around. But, it's exactly what you're referring to, Paul. I mean, whenever you make those changes to something, it's back to the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, I'm sure some of you guys probably, you mean the marketing side, and the executives at Pure Fishing probably looked at the scientists at the company and say, you guys better get this right.
Well, yeah, you can assure that there were a few necks stretched out over the cutting block for sure. But you know what? That is truly the reason why Pure Fishing is where we are. I mean, Berkley is the brand. It's this kind of thing. It's not afraid to, we have the best, but we don't care. We're going to make it better, and that's what makes us stand out and has turned us into the powerhouse that we are. I mean, we continually deliver great product.
Yeah, well, of course, you got to obviously take some risks if you want to keep moving forward. Okay, so we've identified that nylon monofilament certainly has a place as much as it ever did, probably your all-purpose kind of line. And if you're, a budding angler or a newbie or someone who wants to fish a variety of situations, it's probably the one to go with. Now,
sure. To that point, though, Paul, and I'll refer back to, I do. I mean, I enjoy fishing as much as the next guy, but when are you using, when do you want to stretch? I mean, I know for myself, I still throw spinner baits with it. I know that it's given me some flexibility there. I'm not ripping the hooks out of a mouth. I know one of the things that, especially now privy to, some of these elite guys that we see on TV and talking fishing with them whenever we get a chance to, together with some of this innovative stuff that we're doing, I really like the stretch on short line tactics, the flipping, the pitching, just for the fact that, you hear everything. Yeah, it has less friction as it's going down through, when you're punching mat and that kind of thing. But they like that stretch in those short techniques, short line techniques, only because they're not going to blow everything up when they set the hook as hard as they do.
No, with rods being as powerful, and I guess, I kind of oversimplified that. I suggested that nylon monofilaments have a place, are certainly the ideal product for the person who's looking for that all-purpose. But yes, to correct, and along the lines of what Chris mentioned, folks, us tournament guys all swear by nylon monofilaments as well, and there'll be a number of rods in the deck of the boat or in the rod locker that are specifically tuned for a specific technique, and that is the best product. Chris, I guess step further beyond that, a line that looks similar is, Trilene Pure Fluorocarbon, the tournament grade. Where would you go beyond nylon filament? Because it has some similar properties, but then again, it has a couple of unique features, which makes it very popular as well.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the fluorocarbon, of course, is, everybody's heard the terms, the refractive index, and more sensitivity and that kind of thing. Ultimately, it is certainly less visible underwater. but it is a product that's more dense. It does have virtually the same stretch as our nylon monofilaments, but because it's more dense, you do have more sensitivity through it. But the line sinks, and that, I mean, there's just a gamut of different applications for that reason. I mean, anytime you want to get a bait down, whether you're trolling, whether you're casting, crankbaits are a perfect example, or if you're throwing like a sinking minnow, that kind of weightless, any technique like that at all, you know that your bait's going to get down faster, and that's where it really comes in. But certainly, the big claim to fame with the fluorocarbon is the fact that the fish can't see it. So, I mean, anytime you're clear water, light line, it is definitely, arguably, the best line for that purpose.
Yeah, and it's interesting because so many of our listeners, especially at this time of year, tune in because of the fact that we're speaking so many other species, including ice fishing and steelheading. And as a former steelheader, I know my partner in crime here in studio, Steve, still does a tremendous amount of steelheading as well. That if you're not using some form of fluorocarbon leader, that in fact you're not getting anywhere near the bites. And I guess further to what you're saying, Chris, it's amazing. If not that I could fish without my braid from time to time, but if I probably only had to have one line and I had to pick and choose, I would probably pick either nylon monofilament or fluorocarbon. If I was on the desert island, so to speak, we use that a lot here in Renegade Bass Radio. If you're on a desert island, you could only bring one. What would you bring? And I'd probably have to say right now, I'd probably bring fluorocarbon. That's how much of a place it takes on my rods and reels.
And, that's really saying something, because we all know, I mean, all those attributes we were talking about, I mean, its abrasion resistance is, virtually second to none. It's, it has all those characteristics. There's certain, again, it is, it would be, even myself, I would agree, it's probably one of the lines, if not the line that I would pick, the same thing, if I had to go with one. But there's certain applications, with a sinking line, it's not the perfect line for topwater applications.
Sure.
There are times when, again, we're going to need to switch either to the monos or else start looking at some of the other lines that we have.
Which is a perfect segue. We're just going to take a quick little break, folks. Thankfully, we aren't on a desert island. We get to enjoy all the different lines that they have available to us. I'm Paul Shabbat, and he's Chris Hockley. You're listening to Renegade Bass Radio on the Team 1200.
Power bait from Berkley looks, moves, and smells more like the real thing. And since it tastes more like the real thing, fish bite and hold on longer, up to 18 times longer than other artificials, giving you more time to set the hook, which means you'll be hearing a lot more often. Power bait from Berkley, what you need to catch more fish.
You ask yourself questions at 50, like where you've been and where you're going, especially if where you're going is to that special birthday physical. Luckily, Rhodes Williams Insurance Brokers have already asked the right questions about what matters most to you. And with many providers to choose from, they'll find the 50-plus coverage that fits you just right. That's one last question to ask yourself, and one less worry. Except for that.
Get insurance that fits. Call Rhodes Williams Insurance Brokers at 613-226-6590.
This is Eastern Ontario's only show dedicated to angling. The Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats, and Orleans Boat World on Team 1200.
Well, before the break, folks, we're joined by Chris Hockley, National Marketing Manager for Pure Fishing, which, of course, represents so many of the big brands that we are accustomed to as anglers. Of course, Berkley and Fenwick being the two principal ones. You add to that Fluger, Hodgman's, you name it, Seville. They've got it all. Chris is sharing his experience not only as the marketing manager, but as a tournament angler and as a guide as well, on helping decipher what exactly fishing line we either want to see on under the Christmas tree this year, with Christmas only being a couple days away, or in the interest of information as we start to build our arsenal for next water season. Chris, we've talked about nylon monofilaments, we've talked about fluorocarbon. Now we get into the meat and potatoes of the more modern lines, I guess if I can use that term, braids. Now, not all braids are created equal, and I guess you guys have kind of pioneered a variety of different braids. Typically, braid was kind of that super strength, incredibly strong line that was used. You got floating braids, you got sinking braids, you got all kinds of cool things. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, some of the interesting stuff is the terminology. I mean, we've all heard of Spectra, and we've heard of Dyneema, and we've heard of all these things. And, Spectra was the original, and then it's, of course, as they produce new formulas and such, they've moved up to, of course, now the Dyneema is the pinnacle, and the contracts that we have, interestingly, as being the biggest brand, is we have the highest pick counts, the highest quality Dyneema that anybody can get in the industry. It's the same stuff that they're using for sutures and medical reasons and that, and I mean it's a no-fail. It is the strongest product in the world as far. I mean, it's I forget what the stats are completely, but
plenty strong.
Yeah, plenty strong. That's all we need to know, right? I mean,
yeah.
So, and for the fish I'm catching, that's more than strong enough.
Well, that's why you're too busy marketing and not enough fishing.
Yeah, man, oh man, I have to depend on that Berkeley so those fish hold on, because by the time I wake up and realize I've got a strike, it's the only thing that saves my butt on some of these trips. But we now have, we have, of course, our proprietary way, the way that we weave the lines, and that's why you end up with a real smooth. You can tell in a heartbeat who's using what product when you just hear it coming through the guides, and you kind of smile and know it, to the trained ear. But ultimately, to the angler, it doesn't, that's not the factor. I mean, people are using the newer technologies, these braids, for a specific reason. There's no stretch, and when you have no stretch, there is absolute sensitivity. I mean, you can pull your bait across a bump in the bottom, and you can tell whether it's quartz or granite. I mean, it's just an unbelievable product, and it's thinner, so you get deeper diving. On crankbaits, we talked to the guys who are doing, of course, the trolling charts, and their standard for testing any of their baits is 8-pound Fireline, and you start seeing some of the newer technologies, and I mean there are so many different braids. It goes into the exact same kind of thing. Which one do I pick? And there's some definite decisions as far as Fireline's a perfect example. We have the original Fireline, which is actually a thermally fused braid, so it's braided and then it's fused together, and you end up with virtually the same characteristics of monofilament, which lends itself very, very well to casting with spinning equipment, and that's what it's recommended for. But there's also the actual, the braid, Fireline braid, and then a number of other products, be it Spider Wire or Stren or the Berkeley products. That's the one that I think 9 out of 10 anglers are now reaching for. As a bass angler, anywhere from 30, 40, 50. You hear some of the guys throwing 80-pound test to throw frogs and through some of the stick stuff, but it's not the fish you need that real heavy line for. It's what you're fishing in.
Of course. Yeah, certainly. I mean, people, I guess braids or conventional braids have been around long enough now that most of us appreciate that as if you're looking for a super strength line, whether you're fishing frogs or punching mat, or you want that huge distance on a cast and you're fishing it on a spinning reel. I mean, I remember Izumi putting me onto like 2 and 6 pound test Fireline. You can't break it with your hands, even though it's so thin. Yet it's amazing when you want that distance. I mean, it just fires out there because there's so little resistance against the bait. Chris, I guess I want to kind of focus on a couple of the new products. Zilla braid, and of course, I know it's not brand new, but fluoro braid. And I guess they're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum. And maybe you can quickly describe which situation you're using Zilla braid and which situation you think fluoro braid is the perfect choice.
The fluoro braid is one, and particularly with our product, is virtually, it's 50% fluoro, it's 50% actually the same Dyneema products that we're using in our other braids, and it's woven together. And what you end up with is a braid that sinks. And again, that lends itself perfectly to the conversation we had earlier with the fluorocarbon. It gets your line down. You get the baits deeper if you're throwing, again, weightless, different techniques, and that's where you want to go with the fluoro braid. A real specific tool, but it's also very, very valuable. On the flip side of that is, of course, the newest line one of the newest lines that we've got, and a really innovative one is the Zilla braid that you referred to, and it's the first braid that's got some stretch to it, and again, right back to. You can see starting, it's not necessarily a trend. We're just getting back to, there are times when you need that stretch, and we talked about that earlier, but one of the things, I mean, Chris Lane won the Bassmasters Classic, and using the product. And Bobby, when we were down at ICAST, Bobby Lane was, he was just beside himself. The same thing, hey, I can't wait to get out on the water again. They got the first few samples, and that short line techniques again. I mean, these guys are just hammering fish. I've never seen hook sets like that. I'm a big lad, but these boys are hitting home with it. And that's what he's excited about. And the reason why Zilla, I mean, the whole thing is around the big toothy critters too. I mean, it is a great line. If you're getting, a 50-inch muskie hitting 3 feet from you while you're doing a figure eight, you want a bit of stretch there. I mean, things can get busted.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, I remember talking to Bobby Lane directly from Floor of ICAST, and we had you on the show earlier this summer as well, trying to share with our listeners, fresh off the press, so to speak. And it's kind of cool because following, as a tackle junkie, following, the progression of these lines and seeing how successful it is, I certainly very wonderful. And all of our listeners, I mean, obviously the anglers, are very fortunate because, there is that perfect tool for every situation. And anyways, Chris, I want to thank you so very much on behalf of Renegade Bass Radio. Certainly want to extend you and the entire Hockley family and, of course, the Pure Fishing family our warmest regards for Christmas and the holiday season and New Year's. And, we look forward to speaking with you again right after the break.
Well, I would just say the same thing. I don't even know. I mean, that was wonderful. All these great things you're saying. All I'm going to say is ditto. Merry Christmas to everybody.
There you go. Right after the break, Steve and I are going to have the wrap-up. You're listening to Renegade Bass Radio on the Team 1200.
With hunting season quickly approaching, you owe it to yourself to take the short drive to Bennett's Bait and Tackle, your total outdoor store in Smiths Falls. Come browse through Bennett's wide selection of hunting and archery products. Whether it's moose, deer, ducks, or geese, Bennett's can supply you with the products and the knowledge to make this year's hunt the best yet. Names like Remington, Browning, Benelli, and Sacco, just to name a few. Crossbows from Excalibur, Rhino, or the new Striker. Thinking black powder hunting? Check out the black powder guns from CVA and Tradition. Why not have a new Bushnell scope installed on your favorite gun? And don't forget, Bennett stocks a wide variety of ammunition for all hunting seasons, along with a vast assortment of calls and decoys for those early mornings in the blind. Don't wait. Visit Bennett's today. Bennett's Bait and Tackle, your one-stop fishing and hunting location. 158 Lombard Street in Smiths Falls.
The Trilene 100% professional-grade fluorocarbon from Berkeley is remarkably clear. It has little to no memory and is extremely abrasion-resistant. But most importantly, it's the most impact-resistant fluorocarbon you can buy, which means you'll hear a lot more
Woo! Woo! Woo!
and a lot less.
What?
Trilene fluorocarbon from Berkeley. For anglers who want to catch more fish.
What I call amazing. It's the best bait casting reel I've ever seen in my life.
This reel is state of the art. Wow, this is the greatest reel of all time.
Shimano, Calais DC, digital control has arrived.
You're listening to the Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats in Orleans Boat World on Team 1200.
Well, there you have it, folks. Our last show before the Christmas holiday begins. I want to wish you and everyone else out there a very, very safe and happy holiday season on behalf of Renegade Bass Radio and, of course, the Renegade Bass Tournament Association here of Eastern Ontario. It's been a wonderful, wonderful go. We've enjoyed the fall season tremendously. We've had lots of great fishing out there. We've had lots of great guests. Hopefully all of you who've tuned in and continue to tune in have enjoyed and have been informed by the show. We've got all kinds of cool things happening in the new year. I guess looking at today's show, Steve, we've got some pretty interesting things. I know you're one of the people that talked about, the importance of insurance, but you also talked about the question about lending your boat, because, I mean, you hear it quite often. I mean, a renegade guy gets into trouble, and all of a sudden there's offers from 2 or 3 people. I remember it happened to you a few years ago, which is kind of nice. It's wonderful to see the renegade fraternity saying, listen, you know what, I'm competing against you, but here's a boat.
Exactly. Like, I was actually shocked when my boat went down that one year that I had 4 calls from guys offering their boat before I even asked. Like, it's the way the guys are here at Renegade, and we're a tight-knit bunch, and they want to see you out there fishing against you.
What's kind of cool, though, is that, you know, you never really think about it because you're more concerned about helping out somebody that you're competing against. But Heather Bonity talked about how if, in fact, you're insured through Renegade Bass Insurance, that, in fact, actually you are covered, you are protected, you can lend your boat to another competitor or friend or a family member for that matter. But more importantly, she said, make sure if you're not through Rhodes and Williams Insurance, you verify your policy, which is, of course, important. You know, switching gears just for a second, Steve, you know, the interesting thing talking about Chris Hockley and fishing lines is it's amazing. I know you've seen it. You know, you see it on the message board. Someone says, nope, I only fish one fish. You mean I only fish one line? You need braid. You need that for everything, and that's it.
I know everyone goes braid, or someone goes all mono. Like I said, it's just one tool that you got with all your fishing rods and reels. It's the same thing. You got to have mono, braid, or fluorocarbon for certain things. But I have to say, forgot one application is I hung up a couple of Christmas decorations in my bay window with some fluorocarbon, so I forgot to tell people about that one. So that's what the wife steals my line downstairs for.
Yeah, you know, when, you know, kind of extrapolating or contributing further to what Steve talked about on the fishing side of things, you know, if you in fact actually pigeonhole yourself into one specific product, a lot of times, I mean, that's kind of, and I'm not trying to say this disparagingly at all. I certainly don't want to offend anyone who do this, because, you mean, ultimately you have to do what's best for you, and if that's what you're most comfortable with, certainly. But sometimes I've met some people, and, you know, they've come to me at a seminar or you know, at one of the events and kind of ask some technical questions, and a lot of times they start off by saying, you know, I'm kind of frustrated, I'm not catching the fish, and then you ask them, well, what are you using, and so on and so forth, and we'll get to the subject in line, and they'll say, I only use braid. I mean, I don't need anything else, and that's it. And a lot of times, to me, right away, that tells me why they're not catching fish. It's not because they're only using braid, but it's actually kind of indicative of the fact that they're narrow-minded.
Well, exactly.
You know, they close their eyes.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people actually miss a lot of fish they don't realize because they're using the wrong line in the wrong application, for sure.
Yeah, of course, you want to make sure you do that. So hopefully you guys got a little bit more information about what you should be using. Chris Hockley did a wonderful job of explaining some of the new products that are out there. Kind of before we kind of head off to our Christmases, so to speak, I wanted to, you know, take a couple more minutes to thank some of the people out there. You know, we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for some of our new sponsors as well. Of course, we've got Goldwing Auto Care in Yokohama. You mean Peter Gard and Jean Bellevaux and Sean Gard from Goldwing, you know, have ensured that, you know, we are equipped with the best tires. They have a wonderful prize for the biggest bass. I know that Charles
I missed it by that much.
Yeah, I know.
Thanks, Charles.
I had to bring it in there. Otherwise, Steve and Jack would be the proud owners of $4,000 in Yokohama tires, which is wonderful. We've got a couple of new people as well. People like Navionics, Sinorama, Total Battery, J&S Service. J&S, of course, are a couple of members from Renegade Bass.
And our villages.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, absolutely.
Rule?
Pardon me? Rule pumps, yes. They've retrofitted our live release boats with the absolute best pumps on the market. You got companies like G. Loomis and Power Pro who've looked after us. One company I certainly don't want to ever forget because, you know, he's a renegade guy through and through. Of course, I'm speaking of Kevin Trudeau from Western Signs. It doesn't make a difference or what we need. He's always there, whether it's a loaning of a truck or picking this trailer up here or there. And I guess, I mean, in the end of it all, that's been, you know, the biggest, you know, beacon for Renegade Bass is the support we get from the community. We get support from big corporate sponsors. We get support from some of the smaller sponsors. And, of course, we get support tremendously from all of our members, which we certainly appreciate very, very much. Before we go, folks, I want to wish Steve, of course, you a Merry Christmas.
Oh, you too? Like, what's your favorite singer say? Merry Christmas, baby.
Exactly. There you have it, folks. I'm Paul Shabata. He's Steve Barton. You're listening to Renegade Bass Radio. Merry Christmas to all of you.
Thanks for listening to the Renegade Bass Fishing Show, powered by BRP Evinrude, Ranger Boats, and Orleans Boat World. Paul Shabata will be back next week with the latest results, tips, and of course, Big Jim McLaughlin on Sports Radio Team 1200.